Lily Parker pressed her forehead against the car window, watching the trees blur past as her mother's SUV rumbled down the winding country road. She had always hated long drives, especially when they led her somewhere she didn't want to go. The golden hues of autumn had begun to take over the landscape, painting the Oregon countryside in shades of red, orange, and brown. To someone else, it might have looked peaceful. To Lily, it just felt isolating. "We're almost there, sweetheart," Rebecca Parker said, glancing at her daughter in the rearview mirror. "You're going to love it at Grandpa's. He's so excited to have you." Lily didn't answer. She knew her mother meant well, but that didn't make this any easier. Her parents had divorced 6 months ago, and everything had changed. Her mom had taken a demanding new job in the city, one that required long hours and frequent travel. That meant Lily had to live with Grandpa Jim, at least until things settled down. But when would things ever settle down? She shifted in her seat and looked out at the familiar yet distant surroundings. She had spent summers at Grandpa Jim's house before, but moving in permanently felt different. It felt like being sent away. After another 20 minutes of driving, they pulled onto a gravel road that led to a large wooden house. It stood at the edge of a dense forest, its rustic charm unchanged by time. The porch swing creaked gently in the breeze, and the scent of pine filled the crisp autumn air. Grandpa Jim stood on the porch, wearing his usual flannel shirt and jeans. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he had the same warm smile that had always made Lily feel safe. "Welcome home, kiddo," he called out, arms open wide. Lily hesitated before stepping out of the car. Grandpa Jim gave her a firm hug, his embrace smelling of fresh wood shavings and peppermint. "Good to see you, Lily," he said, ruffling her dark brown hair. "We're gonna have a great time." Lily nodded but didn't say much. Rebecca sighed, checking her watch. "I can't stay long, I have to catch a flight tonight." Lily's chest tightened. Even though she knew this was coming, hearing it out loud made it feel worse. "You'll be okay, sweetheart," her mother assured her, crouching down to meet her eyes. "Grandpa will take good care of you. And we'll talk every night, okay?" Lily nodded again, fighting the lump in her throat. After a quick goodbye, Rebecca got back into the car and drove away, leaving Lily standing next to her grandfather on the porch. "She'll be back before you know it," Grandpa Jim said gently, sensing her unease. "Come on, let's get you settled in." Lily followed him inside, the wooden floor creaking under her sneakers. The house was exactly how she remembered, cozy, filled with the scent of old books and the lingering aroma of fresh baked bread. But as warm as it felt, it wasn't home. Not yet. The first few days at Grandpa Jim's were quiet but comfortable. Lily spent most of her time exploring the house, rediscovering old books and familiar hiding spots from her childhood summers. Grandpa Jim, true to his nature, gave her space but always made sure she had everything she needed. "Your room's just how you left it," he said one evening. "Figured you might want to make it your own again." Lily appreciated that. She hung up a few photos, arranged her sketchbooks on the desk, and even started feeling a little more at ease. But then Rick Thompson showed up. It was late afternoon when Lily first met him. She had been sitting on the porch swing, sketching the trees, when an unfamiliar voice broke her focus. "Well, look who we have here." She turned to see an older man, maybe around Grandpa Jim's age, walking up the front steps. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a weathered denim jacket and a friendly grin. "This must be little Lily," he said, his voice deep but smooth. Grandpa Jim emerged from the house, greeting the man with a hearty handshake. "Lily, this is Rick Thompson," Grandpa Jim said. "He's an old friend of mine, been helping me fix up the place." Lily forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you." Rick chuckled. "Nice to meet you too, kiddo. Your grandpa talks about you all the time." Lily wasn't sure why, but something about him made her uneasy. He seemed nice enough, friendly, talkative, even a little funny, but there was something in the way his eyes lingered on her a moment too long that made her shift uncomfortably. Rick stayed for dinner that night. He told stories about the town, cracked jokes with Grandpa Jim, and even complimented Lily's artwork when he saw her sketchbook. "You're real talented," he said, flipping through the pages. "Bet you'll be famous one day." Lily muttered a quiet, "Thanks." But she didn't like how his fingers brushed over the paper a little too slowly. After dinner, Grandpa Jim sent Lily to get ready for bed while he and Rick chatted on the porch. Lily stood by her bedroom window, watching them talk. Rick leaned against the porch railing, laughing at something Grandpa Jim said. She wanted to ignore the nagging feeling in her gut, the strange sense of unease that crept in whenever Rick was near. Maybe she was just overthinking. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, Lily's instincts whispered otherwise. And instincts, she would soon learn, are rarely wrong. Over the next few weeks, Rick Thompson became a regular presence at Grandpa Jim's house. At first, Lily tried not to think too much about it. Grandpa Jim enjoyed having company. And Rick was always helpful, fixing loose porch steps, chopping firewood, and telling funny stories about when he and Jim were younger. But no matter how many times she told herself he was just a family friend, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't anything obvious, just small things. Like the way he always seemed to find a reason to touch her, a pat on the shoulder that lingered. A playful nudge that felt a little too familiar. Or how he would watch her when he thought no one was looking. Lily caught him doing it once while she was reading in the living room. He had been talking to Grandpa Jim, but when she glanced up, his eyes were on her. He didn't look away immediately, just smiled and gave her a slow nod before turning back to the conversation. Her stomach twisted. Why did that smile make her feel uncomfortable? She told herself she was overthinking. He was just being friendly. Wasn't he? One Saturday afternoon, Grandpa Jim asked Rick to help fix the shed in the backyard. Lily was sitting on the porch steps, drawing in her sketchbook, when Rick approached. "That's some real talent you got there," he said, kneeling beside her. "Thanks," she mumbled, keeping her eyes on the page. Rick reached out and traced a finger along one of the lines she had drawn. "You ever think about drawing people? Bet you'd make a great portrait artist." Lily stiffened. Why was he touching her sketchbook? She shut it quickly. "I just like drawing trees and stuff." Rick chuckled. "Well, if you ever need a model, I wouldn't mind posing for you." Lily forced a small laugh, but her pulse quickened. Before she could think of an excuse to leave, Grandpa Jim called Rick over to the shed. Lily exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. She knew what her gut was telling her. Something about Rick wasn't right. That evening, Rick stayed for dinner. Grandpa Jim made his famous beef stew, and they all sat around the kitchen table. Lily kept her head down, focusing on her food, hoping Rick wouldn't say much to her. But of course, he did. "So, Lily," he said, stirring his stew, "you liking it here with your grandpa?" She nodded. "Yeah, it's nice." Rick smirked. "Bet it's different from living with your mom in the city." "Huh?" Lily shrugged. She didn't want to talk to him. But he didn't stop. "I bet you miss her a lot," he continued. "Must be hard, being away from your mom. No other family around." Her grip on her spoon tightened. Why was he talking like that? Grandpa Jim didn't seem to notice anything strange. He was too busy telling a story about an old fishing trip. Lily stole a glance at Rick and instantly regretted it. He was already looking at her, eyes steady, watching her reaction. Something about his gaze made her skin crawl. She looked away, her appetite gone. She needed to tell someone. She just didn't know how. Lily pushed her food around her plate, barely listening to Grandpa Jim's story. Her stomach felt tight, and she didn't know why. Rick kept glancing at her between bites, as if trying to read her thoughts. When dinner was over, Lily helped clear the table while Rick and Grandpa Jim chatted about an old fishing trip. She moved quickly, eager to get away from the kitchen. But as she reached the sink, she felt Rick's presence behind her. "Need a hand?" he asked. Before she could answer, he placed his hand on her back, just between her shoulder blades. Lily froze. The touch wasn't inappropriate, not exactly. But it lingered just long enough to make her feel trapped. She stepped forward abruptly, forcing a laugh. "I got it, thanks." Rick chuckled. "Independent girl, huh?" She didn't answer. Grandpa Jim, completely unaware, laughed at something Rick had said. Lily quickly finished washing the dishes and excused herself, retreating to her bedroom upstairs. She locked the door for the first time since moving in. That night, Lily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed every small moment, the way Rick watched her. The way he stood too close. The way his hand lingered. Was she imagining things? She wanted to believe she was. But deep down, something told her she wasn't wrong. She grabbed her phone and texted Maddie, her best friend from school. Lily. Hey, can I ask you something? A few seconds later, her phone buzzed. Maddie. Of course, what's up? Lily hesitated before typing. Lily. How do you know if someone is weird, greater than like? Creepy weird? Maddie's reply came fast. Maddie. You mean like a stranger? Lily. No. Someone my grandpa knows. I don't know. He just makes me uncomfortable. Maddie took longer to respond this time. Maddie. Has he done anything bad? Lily stared at the screen. Had Rick done anything bad? Not really. Not yet. But it still felt wrong. Lily. Not exactly. It's just little things. Like, the way he looks at me. The way he touches my shoulder or my back sometimes. Maddie. Ew. That's weird. Have you told your grandpa? Lily's chest tightened. Lily. No. He'd think I'm overreacting. They've been friends forever. Maddie. Still, if it makes you uncomfortable, that's not okay. Maybe tell your school counselor? Lily bit her lip. Could she do that? Would they even believe her? She didn't know. But what she did know was that she didn't feel safe anymore. And that scared her more than anything. The next afternoon, Grandpa Jim asked Lily to grab something from the tool shed while he and Rick fixed the fence. Lily hesitated. That meant walking past Rick. She took a deep breath and stepped outside, keeping her gaze down as she made her way toward the tool shed. Hey there, kiddo, Rick called. She forced a small smile and kept walking. But just as she reached for the tool shed door, she felt him behind her. Too close. Way too close. She tensed as Rick leaned forward, reaching past her to grab the door handle. Let me help you with that, he said. Lily jumped back instinctively, nearly dropping the wrench in her hand. Rick chuckled. Whoa, didn't mean to scare ya. But his smile was too knowing. Lily mumbled a quick, thanks, and hurried back toward the house. She could feel his eyes on her the entire way. That night, Lily sat with Grandpa Jim in the living room, watching TV. Rick had gone home. The house felt safe again. She considered telling him. Grandpa, Rick makes me uncomfortable. But what if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was just being a dramatic kid? So instead, she said, Grandpa, do you trust Rick? Jim looked at her, surprised by the question. Of course, sweetheart. Rick's been my friend for decades. Lily hesitated. But what if someone seems nice but isn't? Grandpa Jim chuckled. That's a good question. But trust me, kiddo, Rick's a good man. He's been through a lot. But he's always been there for me. Lily swallowed hard. That was exactly what she was afraid of. Lily had always slept soundly at Grandpa Jim's house. The old wooden walls, the soft creaking of the trees outside, and the distant sound of crickets had always been comforting. But tonight felt different. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the nightlight in the corner. Her blankets were pulled up to her chin, but no matter how tightly she wrapped herself up, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping over her. Then she heard it. A soft knock. Lily froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she turned her head toward the door. Knock, knock. The sound was quiet, almost hesitant. For a split second, she considered calling for Grandpa Jim. But she hesitated. What if it was just the wind? Then came the voice. Lily? Her blood ran cold. It was Rick. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to disappear. Are you awake, sweetheart? His voice was quiet, just above a whisper. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't answer. The silence stretched. Then, after what felt like forever, she heard his footsteps retreating. Lily waited until she was sure he was gone before she finally let out a shaky breath. She had never locked her door before. But that night, she did. And from that moment on, she always would. The next day at school, Lily felt like a ghost. She barely heard anything the teachers said. Her mind kept replaying the sound of Rick's voice at her door. When lunchtime came, she found Maddie in their usual spot by the picnic tables. Maddie took one look at her and frowned. "Okay, you look like you saw a ghost. Spill." Lily hesitated. What if she was overreacting? What if Maddie thought she was being dramatic? But then she remembered the way her whole body had frozen when she heard Rick's voice last night. She had to tell someone. She took a deep breath. "Maddie, Rick came to my door last night." Maddie's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Lily nodded. "He knocked. He asked if I was awake. I just pretended I was asleep." Maddie put down her juice box. "That's so weird. Why would he do that?" "I don't know." Lily's stomach twisted, "but it freaked me out. I locked my door after that." Maddie leaned in closer. "Lily, this isn't normal. You need to tell your grandpa." Lily looked down at her hands. "I tried, kind of." "What do you mean, kind of?" Maddie asked. "I asked him if he trusts Rick," Lily said. "And he just said Rick is a good man." Maddie groaned. Grown-ups are so bad at this kind of stuff." Lily felt her throat tighten. "If I tell Grandpa, and he doesn't believe me," she whispered. "Then what?" Maddie was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and squeezed Lily's hand. "Then we tell someone who will." Lily swallowed hard. Maybe it was time to do just that. That evening, Lily barely spoke during dinner. Grandpa Jim noticed. "You okay, sweetheart?" Lily forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." Rick, sitting across the table, chuckled. "Well, you were up late last night, weren't you?" he said, stirring his mashed potatoes. Lily's heart stopped. She looked up at him, pulse hammering in her ears. Rick's face was calm. Too calm. Like he was waiting for her reaction. She forced herself to swallow. "I went to bed early." Rick smiled. Guess I must have imagined it. Then. He knew. Lily's hands clenched into fists under the table. She wasn't safe. Not anymore. Lily's appetite was gone. She pushed her food around her plate, barely able to focus. Rick knew she had heard him at the door last night, and now, he wanted her to know that he knew. She glanced at Grandpa Jim, who was still eating, completely unaware of the silent tension at the table. Lily swallowed hard. She wanted to scream. "Can't you feel it, Grandpa? Can't you see that something is wrong?" But Grandpa Jim only chuckled at something Rick said about the old days. Oblivious to Lily's frozen expression, Rick took another bite of his food, then looked directly at her. "So, Lily," he said casually, "what do you do when you're up late at night?" Lily's stomach twisted. She knew what he was doing. He was testing her. She kept her voice steady. "I sleep." Rick smirked. Guess I must have been mistaken again." Grandpa Jim laughed. "Getting old, Rick. Your memory's going." Rick chuckled along with him. But his eyes never left Lily. She couldn't breathe. She needed to get out of there. "Grandpa, can I be excused?" she blurted out. Jim looked up, surprised. "You barely ate, sweetheart." "I'm just really tired," she said quickly. Grandpa Jim frowned but nodded. "All right, kiddo, get some rest." She didn't waste a second. She pushed back her chair and walked as calmly as she could out of the kitchen. But as she reached the stairs, she could still feel Rick watching her. The moment Lily got to her room, she locked the door and shoved her dresser in front of it. Her hands were shaking. Her chest felt tight. She grabbed her phone and texted Maddie immediately. "Lily, he knows. Maddie. He knows I heard him last night." Maddie's reply came instantly. "Maddie. What? What did he do?" Lily. "Nothing. Not really. But at dinner, he made a joke about it. Like he was testing me." Maddie. "Lily. This is bad. He's trying to scare you into staying quiet." Lily already knew that. She could feel it in her bones. "Lily. I don't know what to do. If I tell Grandpa, and he doesn't believe me." She didn't even want to finish that sentence. "Maddie. Then we tell someone who will believe you. Like Ms. Mitchell." Lily hesitated. Going to the school counselor felt too big. Too real. But then she thought about Rick standing outside her door, whispering her name. She thought about the way he smiled at dinner, like he already won. Her fingers trembled as she typed. Lily. Okay. I'll talk to Ms. Mitchell tomorrow. Maddie sent a flood of encouraging emojis. But even with her best friend on her side, Lily knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't be sleeping tonight. Lily stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, her dresser still blocking the door. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and she fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, she woke up feeling like she hadn't slept at all. She went downstairs, hoping Rick had left early. But of course, he was still there, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like he belonged there. Morning, kiddo, he said smoothly, flashing his usual too casual grin. Lily barely mumbled a response and sat as far from him as possible. Grandpa Jim, completely unaware of the tension, was frying eggs on the stove. Lily, can you pass me the salt? Jim asked. Lily reached for it. But just as she picked it up, Rick reached at the same time. His hand brushed over hers, his fingers pressing against her skin just a second too long. Lily jerked her hand away like she had touched fire. Rick chuckled. Her heart pounded in her chest. It was such a small thing. A touch, barely anything. And yet, it was everything. Grandpa Jim turned around, smiling. Thanks, sweetheart. He hadn't seen it. He never saw anything. Lily's throat felt tight. She needed to leave. Lily spent the rest of the morning feeling like she was suffocating. Rick was still there, acting normal, chatting with Grandpa Jim like nothing had happened. But Lily knew the truth. He wasn't just some friendly old family friend. He was waiting, testing her, pushing boundaries little by little. And she couldn't take it anymore. She had already promised Maddie. Today was the day. She was going to talk to Ms. Mitchell. She barely ate breakfast. As soon as she was done, she grabbed her backpack and muttered, "I'm gonna walk to school early." Grandpa Jim looked up, surprised. "That's a first. You sure you don't want a ride?" "I just want some fresh air," she said quickly. Jim shrugged. "All right, kiddo, be safe." Rick took a sip of his coffee. "That's a good habit. Walking to school gives you time to think." Lily felt his eyes on her as she grabbed her jacket. She hurried out the door before she lost her nerve. By the time Lily reached school, her hands were shaking. She had never been to the school counselor's office before. What if Ms. Mitchell didn't believe her? What if she thought Lily was just being dramatic? But Maddie was waiting for her by the lockers. "You ready?" Maddie asked. Lily hesitated. I think so." Maddie took her hand. "Come on. You don't have to do it alone." Together, they walked to the counselor's office. Ms. Lauren Mitchell was warm and kind, with gentle eyes that made Lily feel a little safer. She offered them both a seat. "What's on your mind, Lily?" she asked. Lily opened her mouth, then closed it. She stared at her hands, her pulse racing. What if this made everything worse? What if Rick found out she had told? Maddie gave her a reassuring nod. Lily took a deep breath. And then she finally said it. Lily's throat felt tight. She had finally opened her mouth to speak, but the words felt stuck. Ms. Mitchell waited patiently, her kind eyes encouraging, as if she understood this wasn't easy. Lily clenched her hands together. "Just say it. Say it." Finally, she whispered, "It's about Rick." Ms. Mitchell's expression didn't change. She nodded gently. "Okay. What about him?" Lily swallowed hard. He makes me uncomfortable." The words were so small, but the weight behind them felt huge. Ms. Mitchell leaned in slightly. "Can you tell me how?" Lily hesitated, then slowly listed everything. The way Rick watched her when no one else was looking. The unnecessary touches on her shoulder, her back, her hands. The way he had knocked on her door at night, whispering her name. And last night, the way he let her know that he knew she had heard him. By the time she finished, her hands were shaking. Ms. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke carefully. "Lily, I'm really glad you told me this." Lily blinked. "You believe me?" Ms. Mitchell's face softened. "Of course, I do." Lily let out a shaky breath. That was all she needed to hear. Ms. Mitchell explained that they needed to tell Grandpa Jim and report this to the right people. Lily's stomach dropped. "What if Grandpa doesn't believe me?" she whispered. Ms. Mitchell gave her a reassuring look. "Then we'll make sure he does." Half an hour later, Grandpa Jim arrived at the school. He looked confused and a little concerned as he stepped into the office. "What's going on? Lily, are you all right?" Lily felt like her whole world was about to change. Ms. Mitchell took a deep breath. "Mr. Parker, Lily has shared something important with me about Rick Thompson." Jim's face immediately stiffened. "What do you mean?" Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She had never seen Grandpa Jim look so serious before. She forced herself to look him in the eyes. And then, with every ounce of courage she had, she said, "Grandpa, Rick isn't who you think he is." The room fell silent. Grandpa Jim's brows furrowed. "Lily, what are you talking about?" Her voice shook, but she told him everything. The touches. The stares. The night at her bedroom door. She watched his expression change, confusion, denial, then something else. Something darker. When she finished, he didn't speak right away. Lily's stomach twisted. Was he going to doubt her? Finally, Jim exhaled, his hands balling into fists. And when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. "He's never setting foot in my house again." The ride home from the school was silent. Lily sat in the passenger seat, stealing glances at Grandpa Jim. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. He hadn't said much after leaving Ms. Mitchell's office, just a short, "Let's go." Lily's stomach churned. She had never seen her grandfather like this before. When they pulled into the driveway, Jim turned off the truck and sat there for a moment, staring at the dashboard. Then, he took a deep breath and finally spoke. "I should have seen it." His voice was low, angry, but not at her. "I should have protected you better." Lily's throat tightened. "Grandpa, it's not your fault." Jim looked at her, his eyes full of guilt and something else, fury. "It is my fault, sweetheart. I let that man into our home. I trusted him." He exhaled sharply. "But I won't make that mistake again." Lily nodded. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Grandpa Jim got out of the truck, his movements tense. Lily followed, her pulse quickening when she saw another car in the driveway. Rick's car. He was here. Jim clenched his jaw. "Stay inside, Lily." Lily hesitated, but the look in his eyes made her obey. She stepped inside the house, leaving the door slightly open so she could hear. Jim marched onto the porch. "Rick." Rick was leaning against the porch railing, too relaxed, as if he hadn't just been caught. "Jim," Rick greeted, sipping his coffee. "Everything all right?" Jim's hands fisted at his sides. "Get off my property." Rick raised an eyebrow. "Come on, Jim, what's this about?" "You know what it's about," Jim growled. "You think you can manipulate my granddaughter? You think I wouldn't find out?" For the first time, Rick's face twitched, a crack in his mask. "You're making a mistake, old friend," Rick said smoothly, but there was an edge to his voice. "The only mistake I made," Jim spat, "was trusting you." Lily held her breath as Jim took another step forward. "I never want to see you near my family again. And if I do," Jim's voice dropped, "you'll wish you never met me." Rick's smile faltered. A long pause. Then, without another word, he walked away. As his car pulled out of the driveway, Lily let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was over. Or at least, this part of it was. The next few days felt different. Rick was gone, really gone. Jim had spoken to the police, and they were investigating. But the fear in Lily's chest didn't disappear overnight. She still flinched when she heard unexpected footsteps. She still locked her bedroom door every night. And she still had nightmares. One night, she woke up gasping for air, her heart hammering. It had been a dream, Rick standing in her doorway, whispering her name. She wiped her tears and hugged her knees to her chest. Would she ever feel normal again? A soft knock on the door startled her. "Sweetheart, you okay?" It was Grandpa Jim. Lily hesitated before whispering, "Yeah." The door didn't open. But after a pause, Jim said, "I'm right here, kiddo, if you need me." Lily closed her eyes. She still felt broken. But at least, she wasn't alone. A week later, Lily sat on the front porch, watching the leaves fall. She had started seeing a therapist, someone Ms. Mitchell recommended. It wasn't easy, but it was helping. "Hey, kiddo." Lily looked up as Grandpa Jim stepped onto the porch, carrying 2 cups of hot cocoa. He handed her one and sat beside her. They watched the trees in comfortable silence. Then Jim cleared his throat. I read some stuff online about trauma." Lily blinked. "You did?" Jim nodded. "Yeah, I wanted to understand better." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Turns out, I wasn't a great listener before. And I'm sorry for that." Lily stared at him. "Grandpa?" "No, let me say this." His voice was gruff, but there was warmth in it. "You were right to trust your instincts. And I promise, I will always listen from now on." Lily felt her throat tighten. She set down her mug and hugged him. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe again. Like she was finally free. Lily sat at her desk, staring at a blank page in her journal. So much had happened in the past few weeks. Too much. She ran her fingers over the cover, hesitating before opening it. Then, she picked up her pen and wrote. "I thought staying silent would keep me safe." She paused, taking a deep breath. But silence didn't protect me. It only made him bolder. She looked out the window, watching the autumn leaves drift to the ground. "Speaking up was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it saved me." She set the pen down, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She wasn't fully healed yet. Maybe she never would be. But she wasn't afraid anymore. And that was enough. Lily's story wasn't just her own. There were so many others, kids who felt scared, alone, unheard. Kids who thought no one would believe them. But they deserved to be listened to. Protected. Grandpa Jim had learned that the hard way. He had missed the signs at first. But when it mattered most, he believed her. And that had made all the difference. Adults had a responsibility to listen, to pay attention, to protect the ones who couldn't protect themselves. And kids needed to know they weren't alone. There would always be someone who would listen. Someone who would believe them. And, most importantly, someone who would fight for them. Lessons from Darkness in the Old House. Darkness in the Old House is more than just a story. It is a powerful reminder of the importance of trusting instincts, speaking up, and the responsibility of adults to protect children. Through Lily's journey, we see how fear, silence, and doubt can allow danger to grow, but also how courage, support, and belief can break the cycle. One of the most important lessons from this story is the value of trusting one's instincts. From the very beginning, Lily felt that something was wrong with Rick. Though he never openly acted aggressive at first, his lingering touches, unsettling stares, and inappropriate comments made her feel uncomfortable. Like many children in similar situations, Lily doubted herself. She wondered if she was imagining things or overreacting. But the truth is, our instincts exist for a reason. If something feels wrong, it likely is. This story teaches us that children should always trust their gut feelings and not be afraid to question behavior that makes them uneasy. Another crucial lesson is that predators often manipulate trust before they act. Rick didn't immediately do anything overtly harmful. Instead, he positioned himself as a trusted family friend, making it harder for Lily to speak out. This is a common tactic, grooming, where abusers slowly test boundaries, seeing what they can get away with before escalating their actions. This highlights why children need safe spaces and trusted adults who encourage them to speak up before things go too far. Perhaps the most heartbreaking yet important takeaway from the story is that silence does not protect, it empowers abusers. Lily remained quiet for a long time, partly because she feared no one would believe her, and partly because she didn't want to upset her grandfather. This is a tragic reality for many children who experience uncomfortable or dangerous situations. They worry about disrupting their family or being accused of lying. However, the longer they stay silent, the more power the abuser gains. By finally speaking up, Lily took back control of her own safety and well-being. Equally important is the role of adults in recognizing warning signs. Grandpa Jim, like many well-meaning adults, initially dismissed Lily's discomfort because he trusted Rick. This reflects a common issue. Predators don't always look dangerous. And those closest to us are sometimes the hardest to suspect. This story is a wake-up call for parents, teachers, and guardians to always take a child's concerns seriously, no matter how subtle they seem. Finally, Lily's journey shows that healing is possible. But it takes time. Even after Rick was gone, she still struggled with fear and anxiety. However, with support from her grandfather, friends, and counseling, she began to rebuild her sense of safety. This reminds us that speaking up is just the first step. True healing comes from having a strong support system and knowing that we are not alone. At its core, Darkness in the Old House delivers a clear message. Every child deserves to feel safe, to be believed, and to have someone who will fight for them.